When I'm working for a pleasant consequence, it feels good. It feels like I'm working to get something. When I'm working to avoid an aversive consequence, I feel controlled. That's called negative reinforcement. Okay, 4 C words that can fuel self-motivation and I think can fuel actively caring for people. Is it worth it? Do you believe the consequences? This is about consequences. B.F. Skinner taught us this, selection by consequences. Dale Carnegie quoted B.F. Skinner and said, from the day you were born, everything you did was because you wanted something for doing it. Consequences. Is it worth it? So you have to convince people that it's worth it. Now, by the way, you feel competent. Am I right? You feel competent at doing worthwhile work. You've all been there. When you feel competent at doing worthwhile work, you're more likely to be self-motivated. You've been there. No one has to be looking over you. Here's the challenge, leaders, teachers. How do you inspire people to feel competent? Well, you give them feedback. You give them recognition. You show them they are competent. Choice. Your common sense will tell you. When you believe you have a sense of autonomy, a sense of choice in what you're doing, you feel more self-motivated. B.F. Skinner taught us that too. In his book, Beyond Freedom and Dignity, way back in 1971, reading that book changed my life because I realized that I am controlled by consequences. But sometimes I don't feel controlled. When I'm working for a pleasant consequence, it feels good. It feels like I'm working to get something. When I'm working to avoid an aversive consequence, I feel controlled. That's called negative reinforcement. So here's a challenge, leaders. How do we get people to become success seekers rather than failure avoiders? First day of introductory psychology class. I teach 2 classes of 600 students. Maybe some of you have been in that class. And remember, the first day I say, how many are here to avoid failure? And 80% raise their hand. And I say, well, thanks for coming. I know you're motivated, but you're not happy campers. You probably told your friends, I got to go to class. It's a requirement. Not I get to go to class, it's an opportunity. You probably woke up to an alarm clock, not an opportunity clock. And it's all in how you see it. Really, it's all in how you see it. It's your paradigm. It's how you communicate to others and how you communicate to yourself. So Ellen Langer said in her book, Mindfulness, she said, and psychologists know, when you perceive choice, you perceive motivation. You're more motivated. So the deal is, for yourself, sit back and reflect. Be mindful of the choices you have and talk about being a success seeker rather than a failure avoider. It's all how you talk, how you communicate to yourself and to others. This is not based on common sense, it's based on research. But you've all been there, so it'll feel like common sense. Beyond boundaries. What a theme, huh? Beyond. Now, when I think of boundaries, I think of rules, regulations, and restrictions. And I think of the parents and the teachers and the supervisors who hold us accountable with regard to those boundaries. Now, that's not a bad thing. I know if you're like me, I need supervisors. I need someone holding me accountable to do the right thing. But beyond boundaries is something different. I think of those leaders, those teachers, those supervisors, those parents who inspire us to go beyond the call of duty, to do more than we have to do it not because they tell us, but because we want to. I would like to share with you what the research says about how to make that happen. And not just for other people, but for yourself. Here's the deal. How can we inspire people and ourselves to be self-motivated? There's another word. It's called empowerment. You've heard that word, right? Now, the management definition of empowerment is get her done. Just get her done with fewer resources and less time. I empower you. Make it happen. I'm talking about feeling empowered. That's different. Feeling empowered is when you're self-motivated and you do it. Albert Bandura calls it self-efficacy. Do you believe you can do it? Do you have the time, the knowledge, and the training to do what we're asking you to do? If you answer yes, good. Second question, will it work? Do you believe that we're asking you to do the process will work? Albert Bandura calls that response efficacy, believing that the behavior will lead to the ultimate outcome. Community, powerful word. Psychologists know that social support is critical. People who perceive a sense of relatedness, a sense of connection with other people, they feel motivated and they're happier. I want to recite a poem. It's called The Cookie Thief by Valerie Cox. And as I recite this poem, there's only two characters, a man and a lady. Put yourself in the situation. Be mindful. Think about the situation and what you would do. Okay, here we go. A woman was waiting in an airport one night with several hours before her flight. She hunted for a book in the airport shop, bought a bag of cookies, and found a place to drop. She was engrossed in her book and happened to see that the man beside her, as bold as could be, took a cookie or two from the bag between, which she tried to ignore to avoid a scene. She read, munched cookies, and watched the clock as a gutsy cookie thief diminished her stock. She was getting more irritated as the minutes ticked by, thinking if I wasn't so nice, I'd blacken his eye. With each cookie she took, he took one too. When only one was left, she wondered what he'd do. With a smile on his face and a nervous laugh, he took the last cookie and he broke it in half. He offered her half as he ate the other. She snatched it from him and thought, oh, brother, this guy has some nerve, and he's also rude. He didn't even show any gratitude. She'd never known when she'd been so galled, and she sighed with relief when her flight was called. She gathered her belongings and headed for the gate, refusing to look back at the thieving ingrate. She boarded the plane and sank on her seat. Then she sought her book, which was almost complete. As she reached in her baggage, she gasped with surprise. There was her bag of cookies in front of her eyes. If mine are here, she moaned in despair. Then the others were his, and he tried to share. Too late to apologize, she realized with grief that she was the rude one, the ingrate, the thief. So where were you where were you? Whose side were you on? Were you thinking independent or interdependent? I don't blame you if you think independent. You know, that's how we're raised. Nice guys finish last, squeaky wheel gets the grease. Got to blow your own horn. You know, independent. We come in this life of ours, dependent to others, and then we can't wait to become teenagers, you know? We're too old to do what kids do, too young to do what adults do, so then we'll do what nobody else would do to assert our independence. And some of us get stuck there. We're stuck. I'll do it myself. I don't need you. Not good. We need each other. We have to have each other's back. We need a sense of community.